Hi guys, hope you're all having a great day. Stay warm, stay safe. And um, I know definitely taking some good time to stay in on catch up on my movies and shows. So if you got any suggestions, shoot me an email. All right, so we're gonna come back to our discussion on the pituitary gland and hypothalamus, and as we dive into all these different hormones that again they both work together to secrete and again overall help maintain homeostasis in our body. So again, with our pituitary gland, again, it releases hormones that tell the thyroid, adrenal, and gonads when to increase or decrease their oral hormone production. Which again, that's why it's called the master gland. But the hypothalamus, again, and this region in the brain that acts as the control center. Again, that is again, that hypothalamus helps monitor those bodily internal conditions and sends, uh, and it helps deal with sending or releasing those hormones to the pituitary gland. So this overall connection between the hypothalamus and pituitary gland is one of many ways the nervous system and the endocrine system work together to help control our body. So starting off with some of these anterior pituitary hormones, in like for instance prolactin or PRL for short. So with prolactin, we know that it helps stimulate milk production in women after childbirth and during pregnancy. Again, we see that rise in estrogen levels, which help prepare the breast. And after birth, prolactin maintains milk supply as long as breastfeeding continues. Now, what effect does dopamine have on milk production? Dopamine from the hypothalamus actually inhibits prolactin release. So when dopamine levels fall, prolactin can increase and milk production is stimulated. So it's a pretty good example of how a positive feedback loop can act and mainly as a brake on another hormone. Next up, you have your growth hormone or GH for short. So again, this is fairly active within early childhood and adolescence, and we see a drastic decline in our early 20s to 30s. But it helps stimulate bone and muscle growth and also deals with overall body composition, muscle mass, bone strength, and normal metabolic rates. But again, as we see this drastic decline to our human growth hormone as we age, again we begin to see issues with overall muscle mass, bone density, and sometimes even an increase in body fat. So that's one reason why it's super important to maintain an adequate, healthy lifestyle, exercise frequently, maintain a good nutrition, and especially so it's especially important to do those things um, as we age. Myostatin. So myostatin is a protein that essentially inhibits back against that muscle growth that we see from our human growth hormone. It acts as a natural brake, so muscles do not grow without limit. So again, it's a negative feedback loop because of that limit, because of that reason. Whereas again, if it was the opposite and we and it didn't inhibit it, it amplified it, then that would make it a positive feedback loop. So there are drugs like myostatin that are being studied to treat muscle weakness, muscle wasting, like muscular dystrophy that we saw back in that unit when we talked about the muscular system, as well as the variety of different types of MD that we see. So blocking myostatin can drastically increase overall muscle size, but on the opposite effect, you'll oftentimes see side effects with the cardiovascular system, your overall metabolic needs and rates, and as well as overall problems with overall bone density. So it's super important to help maintain and keep muscle size within a healthy range. Now, problems with growth hormones. So there's really two main forms that you're going to see, whether it's an oversecretion or undersecretion. So if we have this undersecretion of it during childhood, then that can lead to dwarfism. Um, Whereas on the flip side, again, if we have an oversecretion of it during childhood, that's when we see gigantism, like what you see with Robert Woodall over there on the right hand side. And again, recall back, we talked to also mentioned how, again, after the fusion of those bone plates throughout our skeletal system, again, if we still continue to see that increase in human growth hormone, it can also affect a handful of other things like your hands and your feet, and your overall facial structure, making it um, causing that to all thicken as you grow taller. Next up, you have your adrenocorticotropin hormone, or ACTH for short. So with this, again, it helps stimulate your adrenal cortex above your kidneys to produce cortisol. So oftentimes you may have heard cortisol is considered the stress hormone because as those levels rise, as a response to emotional or physical stress, again we begin to see a change in blood pressure. We begin to see a change in overall blood glucose levels. So it's important to really maintain an overall healthy lifestyle, manage your stress levels, and not just for your mental health, but also for your physical health. Next, you have your thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH for short. So there's two main types of this that are um, that are released from your thyroid gland. You have T3 and T4, with T3 being thyroxine. So that's the most common one that you're going to hear of the two in most cases. But as those thyroid hormone levels fall, again, we begin to see a change in overall metabolic needs, energy production, as well as overall nervous system activity, because again, it is super important to help and maintain the integrity of your myelin sheath around your neurons. So because of this reason, your thyroid stimulating hormone is considered a negative feedback loop, because it's constantly maintaining that zone point, whether it gets too high or too low. Um, Now, next up, you have your luteinizing hormone. So your luteinizing hormone, as well as this next one that we're going to talk about, both deal with with your gonadotropins, which are essentially just your hormones that you find within the reproductive structures in men and women, so your testes and ovaries. So with LH, again, it stimulates this overall production of testosterone in males, and triggers ovulation and progesterone production in females. Where on the flip side, your follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH for short, helps regulate sperm production and stimulates follicles in the ovary to mature eggs in females. So together, LH and FSH are critical for normal puberty, overall fertility, maintaining menstrual cycles, and um, they both work together and are controlled by those gonadotropin releasing hormones from your hypothalamus, or your GnRH for short. Now, looking at your sex hormones over a period of time. So as people age, again, the production of our sex hormones begin to change as well. And if you look at the graph, you might notice two distinct differences within men. It's more of a gradual decline over time as men age, whereas within females, again, we begin to see this rapid increase your 20s and between your 20s and 30s, and then a rapid decline just pre-menopause. So thus, again, menopause is again leading to the end of those menstrual cycles and changes like hot flash and bone density loss. So whereas on the flip side, within men again see those highly uh, we see those changes in testosterone that will eventually affect your muscle mass, energy, and reproductive function. So they both have their changes again as our lifespan shifts from one phase to the next. Now, next up, you have oxytocin. Oxytocin, again, is one that's found within your post pituitary hormone. So, oxytocin, again, is uh, is considered a peptide, or again, it's those neurotransmitters that we talked about back. Is one of those main neurotransmitters that we talked about back in our nervous system unit that acts as the quote unquote love hormone. So we see this fairly heavily with high levels. Uh, Again, usually during childbirth, during breastfeeding, and then just through social bonding between family members. So oxytocin is involved in that, and it helps, and it deals with the overall regulation of our emotional behaviors. Next, you have your antidiuretic hormone, or ADH for short, also called vasosuppression. So this helps regulate our overall water needs within our kidneys. So whenever we become too dehydrated, um, again, it will your ADH levels will rise, causing your kidneys to reabsorb most of that water, and then vice versa. And if your ADH levels too low, your kidneys are going to respond, releasing the water, thus causing large volumes of urination, you becoming more thirsty. And then this is what typically happens whenever somebody has diabetes or is drinking too much, or etc. So diuretics, again, are a common substance that increase urine production. So common diuretics include, again, caffeine and alcohol, and some other over-the-counter meds, like in this instance, Midol. So, so within Midol, it has diuretic ingredients that helps reduce bloating, but also helps reduce that excess water weight that you might be having. So, um, because diuretics make you excrete more water, it's super important that you're maintaining that set point that your body needs, ha, using electrolytes where need be. That way, you're not leading to dehydration and any sort of other external issues. So all these hormones in action. So again, if we're looking at ADH as a whole, again, when you're initially feeling this overall feeling of thirst, where your water levels are too low, again, your hypothalamus will then be triggered to secrete, again, more of that ADH to be released, thus causing your kidneys to conserve water, making your water levels rise. So again, this is a negative feedback loop, and again, how we're looking at how your hypothalamus is directly relays back to um, your adrenal cortex within your kidney to either conserve or release water as those levels change. So again, it is a negative feedback loop. Thus, in summary, again, we've talked about a handful of different glands and their hormones. We talked about your thyroid stimulating hormone. We talked about your adrenal cortex, your adrenal cortex hormone. Again, we've talked about your follicle stimulating hormones, that dealing with your with those gondrotroponins. We've talked about oxytocin. We've talked about a lot of different things, and again, understanding which hormones belong to which part of the pituitary gland can help you really get a better understanding of, again, their overall reflex effects, and thus how they're related to all these different diseases. So next time we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about the thyroid gland, the thymus gland, and then some of these other common disorders that you see related back to your endocrine system. Hope you all have a great day, and hope to see you guys soon.